Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Byers, for being here today. I want to follow up on some of the questions that Senator Dismang asked, specifically about the hiring of Mr. Abton. It sounds like to me, well, actually, let me go back. Let's think about how this whole thing started. There was a press conference held by the governor, as you're well aware, in November of 2023. In fact, the date that I have specifically, that press conference was held November the 17th of 2023, involving issues about adding additional beds in our prison system. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you said, and this was what I wrote, and I think it's an exact quote, that we didn't want this. That basically this whole thing that's happened and the way that this is unfolded is not what you wanted.
Correct.
Now, the press conference was held November 17th. The next week was the week of Thanksgiving. Can you point to anything that you did between November 17th, when that press conference was held, and December 8th, when you hired Abton as your attorney to sue the state, that you did in a spirit of cooperation to try to resolve this issue?
No, sir.
And so, you know, when you say that we didn't want this, I mean, I just find it completely incredulous that you sit down there and say, we didn't want this, when there was a press conference that was held on November 17th pointing out the displeasure with the fact that the board had not voted to add some additional beds. And in 3 weeks, you hired an attorney to sue the state. The next week, essentially, you suspended the Board of Corrections chair, or the secretary, Secretary Porphyry, and filed a lawsuit against the state. That is not a spirit of cooperation. Would you agree?
Senator, at that time we felt like that there was not a spirit of cooperation on either side.
Well, and in order for there to be cooperation, it takes two parties, and you would be a party to that as the board, right?
That is correct.
And you could have come to the table with any number of solutions to this issue, once again, in a spirit of cooperation to try to resolve the obvious conflict that existed between the governor's office and the attorney general's office, the legislature, the board, and sat down and said, let's reason together and try to resolve this issue. But you didn't do that, did you?
I did not. I don't know if there were any other, you may ask some others, I don't know whether there were any other outreaches made.
The board as a whole did not do that.
That is correct.
And on December the 8th, you hired Abton as your attorney to sue the state. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So on the day that you on the December 8th meeting that you had to hire Abton, and this goes back to Senator Dismang's questions, my understanding of your testimony is that there were not two meetings. There wasn't a meeting to decide whether to hire an attorney.
Correct.
It was in the same meeting that you decided to hire an attorney that you also decided to hire Abton. Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So you said earlier that the board, like many other boards and divisions of state government, are subject to FOIA, right?
Correct.
Were there discussions between you and other board members about hiring Abton prior to the December 8th meeting?
Not that I'm aware of.
And this is what's just unbelievable to me. I mean, it's either just a complete lack of sophistication and proper way of doing things, or either there had to be conversations. I don't see how one of the two has to be true. Maybe both are true. But I cannot believe that there was no discussion prior to the December 8th meeting of hiring an attorney to sue the state, and that attorney being Abton, before you held this meeting to contract with counsel. You're saying there was no discussion about that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. How did you guys decide on Abton then? I mean, he was the only attorney that was brought to the meeting. Is that right?
He was recommended by Lee.
Okay. And so, to be clear, there was no separate meeting to decide to hire an attorney. At the meeting where you decided to hire an attorney, there was only one attorney there. Did you ever send out a request for qualifications?
No, sir.
Okay. No solicitations to the public for attorneys who would be interested in representing the Board of Corrections in this matter to present their experience and their qualifications. Didn't do any type of public solicitation.
No, sir.
No, prior to this meeting, no evaluation of what the attorney would charge. And again, we're talking about billing the Arkansas taxpayer here to decide what rate would be appropriate and to have other attorneys submit proposals to you who might do it cheaper than Mr. Apton. There was none of that.
Not to my knowledge.
So Mr. Apton shows up to the meeting on December 8th, and he's recommended by Mr. Watson to be retained by the board. Is that right?
That's as I recall, yes, sir.
Okay. And so you guys, in that meeting, without talking to any other attorneys, without knowing what any other attorneys would charge the Arkansas taxpayer to do this job, without having submitted any public requests for qualifications or to evaluating other attorneys' experience in handling matters like this, you just hire Apton that day. Is that right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And you do that not through a formal contract, but I take it there was some type of engagement letter that was given to you guys that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So no formal contract was signed, and you go through no typical procurement process, and we ultimately get to March, and then you submit this contract through the state, through the appropriate channels. Is that kind of a correct timeline?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll get to the part about the altering of the contract soon enough, but I just have to say that's just a complete lack of transparency, complete lack of following any type of proper protocol to I think hire an attorney, and it's just shocking to me, quite honestly. But again, I appreciate you being here today. I have a lot more questions, but I don't want to monopolize the time.